Have thrown their support behind thousands of protesters who dispute the results of Belarus's presidential election. The EU says it does not recognize the poll which gave longtime President Alexander Lukashenko an 80% victory. It's vowed sanctions against those responsible for the repression and has promised funds for the Belarusian people. Across the country, demonstrations continue, as Annalise Borges reports from Minsk.
While EU leaders discussed the Belarusian crisis, protesters have been seeking new ways to put pressure on the administration of Alexander Lukashenko. A strike movement has spread across the country to include large state-owned factories, something Lukashenko says is being orchestrated abroad.
The funding of street actions and riots continues. Western states have already openly declared they're not hiding it. They're collecting funds and sending them to Belarus. We can see it.
Lukashenko also warned the members of the newly created Coordination Council that membership of their project is a punishable offense. On Wednesday, representatives of the council were unfazed by Lukashenko's threats and focused instead on the newly conquered support from the EU, which rejected election results and called for a peaceful solution to the crisis through dialogue.
For the Belarusian community, it's very important to start a dialogue with authorities and with Belarusians. And of course, perhaps we need also partners who can help us. For us, it's a priority, because Belarus stayed in the middle of Europe and we need to be with everybody in touch, and we need friends.
The body, a collective of intellectuals, business people, and even former members of Lukashenko's administration, say their aim is to fight for the entire country.
We are not opposition because we represent the majority of our society. Opposition is a minority in my understanding. And today we saw and still have a lot of demonstrants, a lot of manifestations, strikes all over the Belarus, in the capital, in the regional capitals, in the middle and small cities, in the villages. So we represent the majority.
For now, the standoff continues in Belarus between those who demand a new and fair country and those who seem ready to quell dissent at any cost. Wednesday's resolution from the EU has boosted one camp's spirits, but it has yet to yield concrete change. Annalise Borges in Minsk, Euronews.
Brussels has threatened that sanctions will be a major part of Europe's response to Belarus, and President Ursula von der Leyen says they will target all those responsible for violence. But what are the next steps? Well, let's speak now with Nicu Popescu, Director of the European Council on Foreign Relations, and he joins us from Paris. Thanks very much for coming onto the programme. What sort of difference can international pressure like this make? Because it seems that Lukashenko's stance for the moment is one of defiance.
International sympathy with protesters often strengthens with protesters. Large parts of the elite, the political elite in Belarus, of course, are also looking into the future, not just into the past. And, given Belarus' geography, it is clear Belarus will always need decent relations with the rest of Europe and the European Union. And, of course, the positioning of the European Union is important. At the same time, it's equally important to understand that today the European Union has limited leverage on the situation in Belarus. The European Union also is trying to tread a very careful line. It does not want to go out of its way and be perceived as taking, too active a position on Belarus, partly because it sees this protest not being about foreign policy issues. It's about democracy in Belarus, and the best way to help this democratic movement in Belarus is not to turn it into a new geopolitical contest and source of tensions between the EU and Russia. And in this sense, the position of the European Union has been supportive but prudent.
Part of the response is funding. Now, a lot of it's to fight the pandemic, but it's also the EU's offering money to the Belarusian people. Could that be seen as outside interference, notably, for instance, by Moscow?
You know, we're in a situation where probably the most important bit of the European funding announced to Belarus is about helping Belarus manage the post-COVID-19 response. If there is a ordered process of negotiations, attempts of power sharing, the European Union is probably thinking of much bigger funds to help the Belarusian economy. At the same time, we have an objective situation where some people escaped from Belarus, some people are victims of torture. They need hospital care, you know, they need to be taken into neighboring Lithuania and Poland, and of course some funds are needed for that. And helping victims of violence, you know, I would not term this as interference in domestic affairs, but rather a humanitarian measure. Whenever you have a crisis, whenever you have people who are killed and beaten, there is a degree of humanitarian assistance that is always given by the international community.
Nico Popescu, thanks very much for joining us there from Paris. Now to